I'll tell you guys a story about one day on different what we learned from Rabbi Simcha Cohen Cook. Maybe I think I've already told this story in this venue, so um, I'm sorry if it sounds like reruns. Well, uh, first of all, just technically speaking, you're not going to find in, let's say, the Gemara or in the Rishonim a psak. Those people who visit Eretz Yisrael for Yontif, chutzniks that is, have to keep one day of Yontif, 2 days of Yontif, or either. You're not going to see it explicitly anywhere. It's not written out like that. And it also doesn't say those people who leave Eretz Yisrael for Yontif for whatever reason, which is crazy, then have to keep 2 days or one day in Chutz La'aretz. So you're not going to find something as explicit as that in the Torah, in the Gemara. However, there are sorts of hints, like you're not allowed to do different, and the person who goes to one place to another has to keep the chumras of where he is and chumras where he isn't. It's all in that parak. I think it's the fourth parak of Psachim, Machon Shilo. You even have, I think it was Rabbi Ada. Who was it? Oh no, I'm forgetting the name. But he had a question about keeping 2 days or one day in the midbar and all that. What exactly means? There's a phenomenal essay that came out in the journal about 17 years ago, so you can go see that. You're not going to find it as explicit, but Achronim and Rishonim applied certain principles to try to extrapolate what you're supposed to do, correct? So they generally say that if you are in Chutz La'aretz, everybody's there keeping 2 days of Yontif. You can't decide, yeah, but I come from Eretz Yisrael, so I'm going to keep one day. I'm gonna flaunt this. Mm-hmm. Okay, you can't do that. What about someone who visits? So there are major psukim out there that say, no, you don't have to keep one. He only has to keep one day. And there are some say, he has to keep 2 days in Chumrah because that's the Chumrah of where he came from. And that's pretty prevalent nowadays. But it's been pointed out by many that that's a pretty deep case. For example, when it talks about different minhagim, you come from a place where they do malacha on Erev Pesach and the place where they don't. And minhagim are like that. This one example of Yontif Sheni is not brought up in the entire parak. It should have been so common. Historically speaking, we knew that lots of people come to Eretz Yisrael for Pesach. Why don't we bring it up? And by the way, all those people come from Alexandria and from Tarsus and from Persia for Pesach or whatever other holiday. I have to keep 2 days of Yontif just like where they came from. That would have been the most common case. And millions of Jews showed up for the Rolim, especially in later Second Temple times. Why wouldn't they mention such a thing? And also, historically speaking, I think the best proof for the position that they only have to keep one day is the history. They tell people who keep, let's say, 2 days of Passover, you have to do a second Seder, the second night of Passover. Do you think that all those people came from Bavel with Korban Pesach, that they offered on the 14th of Nisan, and then they ate the night of the 15th of Nisan, would then do a second Korban Pesach the afternoon of the 15th, the first day of Yom Tov, so they could eat a second Korban Pesach the second night? That sounds kind of ridiculous when you put it this way, that all the guests are doing Korban Pesach. It's a stira minei uve. So obviously it never happened. Rav Kook was very much opposed to it. So what happened to us? Usually the typical Anglo-American Ashkenazic people, when they come to Eretz Yisrael, are instructed to keep 2 days of Yontif when yeshiva or when visiting, right? That's the most common thing. And so you see, that's why we have the strange phenomenon also the day after the holiday is over, Isra Chag, you'll see people all dressed up like it's still Shmini Atzeres, or the new common name for the second day of Shmini Atzeres is Simchas Torah. Right? That's what you'll see. You'll see it all over the place. And in yeshiva also you'll see it like that. Where I was in Shmuel Navi Street when we first made Aliyah, it was kind of funny. They had a minyan and other types made up of young men who are typically married in Eretz Yisrael and studying in places like the Mir for many years and raising children in Eretz Yisrael for many years. But because their whole subsistence is from their parents, they rely on their parents back in Chutz La'aretz who could pull the plug or say, okay, vacation's over, now come back to America and start, earning your keep or working, whatever it is. So because they could be going back eventually to America, they're considered B'nai Chutz La'aretz, and they should keep 2 days of Yontif. They have set synagogues in the north central Jerusalem, a synagogue where the minhag is to keep 2 days of Yontif. That's also a stira minei uve. You're saying that in and around Or Sameach you have things like this.
Mm-hmm.
You have
meals.
Well,
they have to plan meals for
they have
guys.
to, well, they have the shul is considered a chutz la'aretz shul in Eretz Yisrael. So pointed out also Rishonim when they talk about this issue. Let's say the Rambam makes the issue of where to keep Yom Tov Sheni, where it's kept is a place, depends on the place, not depends on the minhag of where you're coming from and all those usual rules. It's these places keep and these places don't. By the way, and the Rambam standards are kind of strange. They're not the typical standards. The Rambam standards are that if it's a place where the messengers did not go to back in late Second Temple times, even Eretz Yisrael, so they have to keep 2 days of Yom Tov. So Kochav Yaakov, even though it's within half a day's walk of Jerusalem, would have to keep 2 days of Yom Tov because it's a new yeshuv. Jews didn't live particularly here. They lived in Michmash, and they lived in Geva, and they lived in Beit El, and they lived in other places around here, but they didn't live here. So, like the Rambam says, if you start a new yeshuv in Eretz Yisrael in the Midbar means wilderness, doesn't mean desert. So they'll have to keep 2 days of Yom Tov right in the middle of Eretz Yisrael. That's not the standard. No. But so I'd say that, but here the only reason why we keep 2 days of Yom Tov on Rosh Hashanah is that you can't say, oh, some people keep 1 day, some people keep 2 days. Like this day is holy, this day is not. There's has to be unanimous. There's a rabbinic authority that says it. That's Rabbi Gamliel's shita. He imposed. He didn't say we don't have in the Mishnah saying, oh, you're cholik on me. I'm going to force you to do like me. Which day is Yom Kippur? You can't disagree on what day the holidays are. Can't disagree on which day is the Yom Kadosh and which day is not. You could theoretically disagree and say, everybody, you can keep advocating. I think you're wrong, and I think we should go back to doing this. It should be a Yom Chol, and I believe in that. But until everybody's on board, or at least the majority in a particular town is on board, you can't just go and say, okay, throw the second day of Yom Tov out the window.
I work at a yeshiva. That's mostly American.
So I don't know which holiday you're talking about.
Second day Rosh Hashanah, or actually, no, rather.
So really, should they be keeping it? My point is, we don't hold like the Rambam standard. The practice basically is and always was. Sorry, I shouldn't say always was, but the practice is that Eretz Yisrael for keeping 1 day is basically the yeshuv of Eretz Yisrael. Yeshuv means the area of Jewish settlement. So whatever's classically where Jews consider them part of Eretz Yisrael, Israel, which corresponds mostly to the borders of the modern state, those places keep 1 day Yom Tov. And beyond that, they keep 2 days of Yom Tov. That's the general rule. So the rule is a lot would be included, by the way, in classic Eretz Yisrael for this regard, even if there might not be Kedushas Haaretz there, even maybe perhaps there should be. Okay. Anyways, let's get back onto the point. So we were told to do like they do in Jerusalem, keep 2 days of Yom Tov. That's what we were told when we were American yeshiva bachers who were sticking around for the year in Rehovot. And so it was awkward. Let's say that first Sukkot came around. So we had Simchas Torah the day when everybody else on campus is already Yisra Coggins back to work. And they're like looking at us like, didn't we just do this yesterday? You're having 12 guys doing hakafas and stuff and pretending it's Yom Tov. It was really weird. Okay. And then we were not together for Passover. And we went to Matas Yahu, Moshav Matas Yahu for the 8th day of Passover. Remember, there's only a 7th day. So Rabbi Leff allowed us to have an 8th day. It was a few guys sticking around. The whole yeshuv was doing things, we were, doing our things. So that was weird. Came Shavuos, and Shavuos was on a Sunday night, I think. Must have been. Well, Shavuos on a Sunday night. Yeah, it must have been a Sunday night because Passover started that year on a Motzei Shabbos. So Sunday night Shavuos, and came Monday afternoon. The rabbi brought us to visit Rav Kook at his house at the end of the holiday. And it was very nice. And towards, the end of the day, the rabbi's telling Rav Kook, okay, we got to get the guys going there. They have to do their Yom Tov Sheni. We're going to have a whole Yom Tov Sheni thing. And Rav Kook basically, stopped the music. What happened? What? And the Rosh Hashiva was like, well, the Americans, we keep 2 days and this and that, the minhag, and they're going back and all that, And Rav Kook just stared at him and says, okay, so it's the last time they're going to do 2 days of Yom Tov in Rehovot, because in Rehovot, there's no such thing as Yom Tov Sheni. His illustrious uncle had a psak. There's no such thing as Yom Tov Sheni in Eretz Yisrael. Rav Kook, it's told of Rav Kook that he was against it. Rav Kook didn't think that already visitors are coming. This is the 1920s and 1930s in Jerusalem. Says visitors, thank God. The modern yeshuv is starting, so there were hotels. The King David Hotel became the King David Hotel then. It was supposed to be a nice classy hotel and other hotels. So they got actually guests from Chutz La'aretz on the Yom Tovim. So Rav Kook said, really, he didn't want them to have, let's say, a second Seder. the second night of Passover. And it's told, I think I heard the story from Schechter, that there was one of the Talmidim of Rav Kook, one of the younger rabbis, took a job as a mashgiach and hotel rabbi for the Yom Tov. He needed to make some money. And basically this hotel rabbi was going to be having his chutznikim have a second seder. He went to ask Rav Kook how to do it. Rav Kook said, I'm opposed to it, but to save face, Rav Kook said, okay, so they do a second seder, but make sure there's some musicians in the dining room, playing music so that people know this isn't Yom Tov. Do what you wouldn't do on Yom Tov. And so Rav Kook basically said, our Rav Kook said, you don't keep 2-day Yom Tov. So I learned that lesson. Yeah, I tell people now, there's many to whom on whom one should rely, and it seems to be the more historically true position that no matter who you are, when you come to Eretz Yisrael, if you intend to go back or not, you're supposed to keep 1 day of Yom Tov in Eretz Yisrael, and there are many who rule that way. And I think it certainly avoids all the crazy steers minei uve. And this is actually a formative part of my own education. When Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik died, it was Sukkot, and he died in America. You know who he was? He was a Rosh Yeshiva in Chicago, the Rabbi Soloveitchik's younger brother. So it happened in the early 2000s. So when he has a son who's a Rav in Beit Shemesh, Ramat Beit Shemesh. His other sons are in Chicago and New York, also Rosh Yeshiva. So they brought Rav Aaron for Kvura during Chol Moed to Eretz Yisrael. And the day after Yom Tov, Isru Chag, they start sitting Shiva for him because the person's buried on Chol Moed. The Shiva starts after Yom Tov is completely out. And Rabbi Soloveitchik's own granddaughter was studying seminary at the time. So she was in Ramat Beit Shemesh, and she sat with her uncles, and her father, I think, or her uncles at least, who were sitting Shiva. They were sitting Shiva in Isra Chag, but she was keeping Simchas Torah with like the other American girls who were visiting. So she went from Hakafas, Yom Tov and all that, to sitting Shiva, and she wrote about how, and this was an essay that was in the YU newspaper, about Judaism creates all these, paradoxes and dualities and fancy words and all that. It's an amazing that halacha could generate that. Din, for these people, it's Yom Tov, for these people sitting Shiva, there's no contradiction and all that. And I was thinking, she wrote this in true classical fashion, true to her family's teachings, to look at things with extreme nuance. Greetings. And to take enjoyment in the intellectual exercise. But to me, this said there's an inherent problem. If your halacha is not supposed to generate such open contradictions, either it's Yom Tov or it's not. You can't have both. So the fact that she was pointing this out leads us to the halachic absurdity that there's no such thing as 2-day Yom Tov here in Eretz Yisrael.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.